So I want to be respectful of people's time. I know we're in the middle, a lot of us are in the middle of a work day. So I do want to get started. I think people are going to start to flurry, and I see them coming in now as we speak. So I'm just going to get started introducing myself and introducing WIHD. For those of you who have not been on our calls before and you're not familiar, my name is Stephanie Bellantoni. I'm with the Community Support Network at WIHD, which is the Westchester Institute for Human Development. And we have been holding these panel sessions. I think this is maybe our third or fourth one, focusing on college experience programs and college opportunities for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Each time we talk to some different folks, different professionals from agencies, from college programs, parents, students, to get their input on all the different aspects that we think about as parents and professionals exploring these opportunities. So I personally, I have 4 children. My oldest is 15 and she has Down syndrome. When I started to learn about the opportunities for students like her when she comes out of high school, it was very intriguing to me that it didn't have to be no, you can't. That there was an opportunity for her to continue learning and continue getting the support she needed in a college setting, even if she wasn't necessarily pursuing a bachelor's degree, an associate's degree. So that's where my passion comes from. I've got a bunch of my colleagues from WIHD on the call with me. I've also got colleagues from outside of WIHD. We are going to talk today about these college experience programs with a focus on self-direction budgets. If you don't know what those are, we're going to briefly talk about that. And really what the conversation is going to be about is if I'm going to pursue a college type program for my child with an intellectual or developmental disability, how can I fund it? What are the different opportunities? And with respect to self-direction budgets in particular, which are complicated in and of themselves, how do you apply that? So today we have with us Millie Becker is a parent of a young man who participates in a college experience program. We've got Diana Mirakaj, who is a professional with a local college experience program and a wealth of information as a family member, as a professional, and Karen Healy, who is in charge of our self-direction brokerage department at WIHD, who helps a host of families with this exact initiative. So without further ado, let me see how many people we've got on now. Oh, good, we're growing. I know that when you came on, there was an indicator that the program was going to be recorded. So if that is uncomfortable for you, if you want to black out your screen or change your name or whatever you want to do, but please feel comfortable to ask questions. Either unmute yourself to ask a question or put it in the chat. And what I'm going to do is try and make sure all those questions get addressed at the time when we're talking about that topic. Lastly, I'm going to say, if you have questions that are pertaining to these higher ed programs for kids with developmental and intellectual disabilities, but it's not specifically for self-direction, throw those in the chat too, because even if we don't address them today, I will follow up with you. We can talk about other resources for you and other opportunities to get those answers and unpack that. So before we get started, I'm going to give my panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves quickly. So I am going to start with you, Karen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Healy. I'm the broker supervisor at WIHD. I've been a broker for 7 years now, and I head up a team of 7 brokers, and we help about 160 individuals in Westchester to self-direct. Self-direction is a fantastic program. I'm happy to take any questions, and if you guys want to email me separate to this with questions about self-direction. I guess we're assuming here that most people have self-direction, as that's what we're talking about. But if you don't have it and you want to know how to apply for it and what type of things it's going to include, you can definitely send me an email and I would be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you. Diana, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Diana Marakai. I am Director of Financial Process and Operations over at Impact U, which is a wonderful post-secondary immersive program run out of Concordia College in Bronxville. We have an amazing cohort of students, and it's a pleasure being there and watching how these students have absolutely thrived in the 2+ years that they've been on campus with us. I am responsible for a lot of the billing and a lot of the invoicing and a lot of the wrangling when it comes to what goes on, happily when it comes to working with the self-direction budgets and all that is possible when it comes to those funds being used in support of the program. I also am involved with transition work and OPWD services when it comes to the little pumpkins that are just starting the process. So I get to see the continuum where it begins and as it runs through. So I'm happy to be a part of this discussion today and be involved in answering any questions I can.
We're so happy to have you here. And our parent for today, Millie, can you just say hello and tell us a little bit about why you're joining us in this conversation today?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Millie Becker, and I'm the parent of a 21-year-old boy, John, who is at Impact U. And I was so happy to participate in this and happy to be asked, because from the time John was diagnosed with autism at 18 months, I worried so much about his future. And I was told at that time that I should start looking for an institution for him to place him in, and I would not accept that. I continued to place him in situations where he could rise to the occasion. He graduated Fox Lane High School in 2019. He went to his prom. He was in chorus. He became an Eagle Scout, and Impact U has been an answer to my prayer, because this morning he called me. He took a humanities test this morning, and he called me to tell me that he passed. He was so proud of himself. And interestingly enough, I asked him what the test was about, and he said it was on Oedipus Rex, and he didn't like the story. It scared him. So there you go. You know, this is what these programs are capable of. This is what these programs can give, not only to the children, but to the parents. It's hope, and we need more of it.
Okay, thank you so much. Again, for anybody who just jumped on, you didn't miss anything yet. We're gonna get started now with the content. We've got a panel of professionals and parents here to talk about the application of self-direction dollars, which are Medicaid dollars through OPWDD put in the format of a self-direction budget. Again, Karen, I did put your email address in the chat. If anyone wants more information on how that works, please reach out to Karen, and one of our team at the Community Support Network will be able to help you navigate that. So let's get started. One of the first ways that I'd like for you guys to talk about the self-direction dollars being applied to these college experience programs is community classes. So can you talk a little bit about the community classes budget line and a self-direction budget and what that looks like in a college experience program, how that applies?
Sure. So the community classes line comes from a category called IDGS. Within self-direction, there is a lot of acronyms, so I'm going to try and not use them. But basically that IDGS, which is individual directed goods and services, is capped at $32,000 for the entire category. There are other items other than community classes in the category, such as transportation, memberships in gyms, camp, etc. The reason I'm pointing this out is, that you want to be conscious that, you might want to put money in other things as well as your community classes. So the maximum that can go into this category is $32,000. So a community class is considered a class that anyone in the general public can attend. If you cannot take it for credit, so you can only audit the classes. They will not pay for a class, if you're going to receive credits for it. There is criteria that the broker would help families when they're applying for any type of a community class, not just for a college class, but other community classes. It has to have published rates. It has to have a website where they advertise. What they're trying to show is that that it's a class that anyone in the public can get access to and can join and can participate in. So it's a fully integrated class. So they would be the questions that the broker would have a discussion with the family to talk about the types of classes that they're taking. I know Deanna can talk a little bit more about the specific community classes that the students take at Impact U, and maybe Millie can also give us an idea of the types of classes that John takes. So hopefully that answers kind of the general question about community classes.
Absolutely. So thank you for that, Karen. So as she mentioned, and one of the key points there is the IZGS aspect of it and being non-matriculated. So the fact that these are not credit-bearing classes, they are audit, does not preclude the students from attending. As you heard Millie mention this morning, John took a test in his humanities classes. So our students are in classes with all the other students, and that's extremely important. So when the FIs that we work with, and we work with a number of them, they check what the schedules look like for each of the students. So when we're submitting at the beginning of the semester, we have to provide what these schedules look like, and the classes are listed. If it looked as if this was some schedule that blocked out any other, as Karen mentioned, they have to be open to everyone, there would be a flag and they wouldn't be approved. The students attend classes that are, psychology, they are mathematics, they're history, it's sociology. They are integrated in, because the whole idea, remember, of this is supposed to be, it's a college experience. So our students are with everyone else. They are in the classroom, they are learning. They may have someone, and we're going to get to this in another line item, so I don't want to jump ahead for Stephanie, but with ComHab, they have different people that may be in there as a peer neighbor, helping them if they need to, if it's a difficult class and they might need some support. But the students are in there to learn and to experience what it is to be a college student. What we're trying to emphasize is that this is what that real life experience of a college student is like. So the classes may include, in our specific case, we have the conservatory, which is music classes, percussion, singing, piano. All of these classes are available for anyone to take, so it becomes available for our students, and it's a very well-rounded and very experiential at the whole experience there for them. Millie, do you want to talk a little bit more about John?
Well, I just want to say that it has been such a well-rounded experience, and I see the difference, the growth and the development in my son from last year to this year. He's more confident, he's more secure in his self-image. He does his own laundry even when he comes home. The skills, the executive skills that they're learning and the independent skills that they're learning transfer over to their lives, just as any other college student you would expect from any other college student. But I also want to say that this program came to my attention, and again, for the parents who are on this call, through another parent. We are our best network here, and I am so grateful to have found Impact U, and that John was able to qualify for the classes. Now, I also want to say, he doesn't take all the classes. The young adults are placed, and correct me if I'm wrong, Diana, in classes that they're interested in and that they can you do well in. So, there's some classes John won't take just because he doesn't like math. So he doesn't want to take it. So it's very well-rounded, and it does a lot for the student.
No, absolutely. The schedules are based on the interests of each student. Discussions take place with the families to decide what is in their best interest, where they're going to thrive. We may discuss how and where we can it's not a matter of challenging the student, but we like to look at this in the standpoint of assumed competency. We want to make sure that they have the opportunity and the ability to do their best, and never think that something is not within the realm of possibility. They impress us every day. It's something to really look at and just admire and be astonished by. And giving them the chance to thrive, there is no greater gift. but it's always with the intent of finding something that they're going to enjoy and where they're going to do their best, because there's no greater feeling than seeing them succeed. So every schedule is built with that goal in mind.
Thanks, Diana. There's a couple of questions in the chat relevant to this topic that I want to go through. One question, and I think this is going back to the conversation about audited classes as opposed to matriculated classes. Does this mean that they are limited to certificate classes, since many university classes are for credit, even if it's not being used toward a degree, or is it more important to be listed as non-matriculated? So I mean, I think the answer is that whether it is a certificate class or a class toward a major, that if the student with the self-direction budget is taking it, it's got to be audited. I think that's the answer, but Diana, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, no, there isn't a limitation on that. It's just what they're getting from the class is how it's being listed. They're not collecting credits.
Okay. Cindy, if that didn't answer your question, just shoot me another one in the chat.
No, I think it does. I just wanted to make clear that it's because I kept hearing that, for example, that they can't receive credits for it. And so I don't know if that's just something that, for example, the university or the college does on the back end. Because most classes, to my knowledge, unless it's changed, since I've been in college, they automatically have 3 credits that you receive. So if it's just a matter of just not accruing those credits,
right,
then yeah, then that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
There's another question. Does the agency who provides services, and I think we're going to get to this in the next question, for non-matriculated courses have to be certified as an OPWDD provider to service the clients? Let me see who asked that question. Ishan, the next topic we're going to talk about is community rehabilitation. Are you talking about that kind of one-on-one support? Are you talking about support at the college?
Yeah, or maybe he's meaning the actual college.
Yeah.
They obviously can't be OPWDD providers. I mean, they have to have a relationship and an MOU and different things with OPWDD. But yeah, as you said, maybe if it's more specific to talk about the COM Hub or other parts, that might be maybe what this person is asking.
Okay. So let me just see if any of these questions are about the community classes. How about adult education non-credit classes? Okay, there's a load of questions. I'm going to get to your questions. I'm going to save the chat and get back to all of you. I don't want to get out of the inclusive higher ed questions. There's a lot of questions with regard to other transition programs, other types of learning opportunities. So I just want to keep our focus today on those college experience programs, but I'm absolutely seeing all your questions. There's one that says, I heard if they enter these programs with a high school diploma, there's a chance they can get a degree, perhaps an associate's degree. If one of you want to address that quickly, but again, I do want to stick to the funding conversation. Diana, do you want to speak to that one quickly?
I think it depends on when and if they want to transition over. So in some cases, we have families who started off coming into the program and then had interest in maybe beginning by exploring it, seeing how their student is doing, and then having an interest in maybe having their student transition over to becoming a regular matriculated student. There's always a possibility. That depends on each individual student. Mm-hmm. That's not something that is symptomatic of the program. That's individual to the student. So there's no rule that says if you start off in just a post-secondary program like this, that you're locked in and that's all you can do. I think that becomes a matter of how your son or daughter is performing in the program, in any program, and if they choose to now begin taking regular classes and how they're going to do in college. But that's not necessarily a self-direction question.
Yeah.
I
think it varies program to program too, as to whether or not the colleges allow the students to straddle the matriculated options as well as the college experience options. But remember, with regard to self-direction is not going to pay for that. Self-direction is only going to pay for the audited classes. And actually, Karen, I don't know if you know the answer is, if you do straddle two programs, then does that jeopardize your coverage for even the audited classes? I don't know.
Well, what I was going to say is, and I think I mentioned this earlier, you know, in order for self-direction dollars to pay for the college experience like Impact U, we had a lot of discussions with OPWDD and with fiscal intermediaries to kind of to tease this out, try and see how we could get the dollars to be paid for. So I think every case, it would have to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. You would have to, it depends on the fiscal intermediary, it would depend on the program. So it's just not easy to give a straight black and white answer. And everything I'm going to say today and in all of my presentations, I always say everything has to be pre-approved by the fiscal intermediary first. And it would have to go through the certain criteria of the community classes, etc. So, you know, I think it's just, if you have a specific situation, then you would speak to your broker, and then they would kind of have the discussions with OPWDD and the fiscal intermediary to see. The other thing is, if someone is actually taking these classes, they're for credit, I mean, you can use the other parts of the self-direction budget still. You know, you can use the housing piece and the ComHab piece. It just won't pay for the community classes part, but you can kind of pick and choose what you want your dollars to pay for, even if it's not for the classes.
Right. So there's a question in the chat actually that segues nicely into our next conversation. The question is about agencies operating in a college setting. And can they receive the funding through self-direction, or does the agency have to be approved? So what I want to talk about next is community habilitation, right? So when our children I have a daughter in high school, and she gets a certain number of hours of ComHab support every week. What can that look like if she were to progress to a college experience program? How can those ComHab dollars be applied to that college setting? Okay.
So just to go back one step, just so that everyone knows, under your self-direction budget, there are two ways that you can use ComHab staff. One is through an agency, traditional services, where you would sign up with an agency and you would work with their staff. The rate is significantly higher than if you decide to use staff as self-hired staff. So in this instance, if you're, on the college campus and you want to use self-hired staff, the staff would have to enroll and do the application with the fiscal intermediary, because they would actually be the employer of record. So the staff would complete the application process, be fingerprinted, etc. You would agree on the rate that this person is going to be paid. And then they would become ComHab staff. Now, I know Diane is going to talk more about the Impact U model, and they use peer neighbors, but you also have an option. So for example, someone is in college, but they come home at the weekends, or they're home over the summer. You can also have self-hired ComHab where you live. So not on, as well as the college campus, you can have a different staff who are available while you're at home at the weekends or during the summertime. Again, all staff would have to be cleared by the fiscal intermediary, and the hours are obviously flexible, and that is figured out with the parents and with the individual and with the college of when you want that support to be available. And as I said, I think Diana can explain more about how that looks with Impact U.
Yes, but coming right off of Karen's point, the way that we have our model operated is that same system. It is separate of Concordia. It is just operated as self-hired staff, still vetted and still run through the fiscal intermediary as self-hired, and it's with the family, which Millie knows this firsthand. Mm-hmm. And that was actually done to facilitate the process so that it was controlled through the families with self-hired staff, utilizing ComHab dollars and budget, and maintaining that for hours in support of the students individually. So it was trying to balance everything and keeping that budget running clearly while still providing for the needs of the individual student without adding additional overhead when it came to the actual fees of the program, or adding additional overhead when it came to the college and the fees associated there.
Okay. Millie, did you want to add anything about the peer neighbors or the use of ComHab for John at at Impact U?
Yes, so as far as is concerned, when we received the letter that John was accepted to Impact U, one of the first things I did was I hired a tutor who worked with John over the summer to get him ready for his freshman year. And I picked her specifically because she lived near the campus, because I knew that I could use her as the ComHab person. Seamless. I mean, Karen and her staff have been unbelievable. Seamless. She's still with him today. That's number one. Number two is, as far as the peer neighbors, wow. Some of the kids have graduated, but they still keep in touch with John. Devin Williams, who's no longer there, they still text each other. They call each other. They're friends. They share interests. And also what's great about the peer neighbors is that they can guide the students without seeming like they're a parent or a teacher. You know, it's more like peer pressure a little bit in terms of, hey, dude, why don't you take your shower at 7:30 instead of 9:30 or something like that. So if they have to correct them, and they're very willing to be friends with these kids, and they take field trips. They go on, they go to the city. Well, before COVID, everything's different now. But even with COVID, you know, they're still able to interact, go bowling, and do activities. So it's a very, the formula works.
And Millie, I think a point you said there, which really struck a chord to me, is that they're friends. You know, that the word staff is always like, oh, you know, I'm your boss, and
No.
someone, it's their friends. They become friends. And I think a lot of self-hired staff too, that, you know, they're young people as well, and they're there to just to be a friend, which I think is important to point out.
John received Christmas cards from them. He sent them Christmas cards, and you know, it's such a different experience for a parent. You know, I have to say this, in the years that John was in his school district in Bedford, my son never ever got invited to a birthday party. Never. And that really, I don't think he noticed it, because, you know, he went to the parties of the kids in his class, the self-contained class, but for the big population, never. And now he has friends now, and that's really important for everybody.
Okay. I see all the questions coming in, and I love the questions, and I wish I could sit here all day. We have an agenda to hit on self-direction specifically, but just so that our panelists know, there's lots of questions about the peer neighbors and how they work and how they're trained. But so you know, those are the kinds of topics we cover in these sessions. So peer neighbors may be its own topic one day, but today I really want to focus on self-direction. Again, at the end of the session, if there's time, I'm going to go back. But I want to move on now to the housing piece. And Karen, you talked about this a little bit before, how those self-direction dollars can be used to apply to that that rooming piece, that dormitory residence, whatever that might look like for a.
Okay, I just want to say that the peer neighbors thing might be confusing to people because it's mostly called self-hired ComHab staff. And it's just the Impact U program.
Thank you.
Peer neighbors. So it is self-hired ComHab staff. They have to go through the regular process, like any self-hired ComHab staff are. Someone asked about the paid neighbor, but that's completely different. So it brings us into the housing piece. So if someone is living independently, so they're not living in their parents' house and they want to move out, they want to either go to this college campus to live, or maybe they're not on the college campus, but they're renting an apartment in the same town as the college is. The care manager would firstly need to submit an application for a housing subsidy. So there's a number of documents that the broker and the care manager would have to pull together, including a lease and in various quality checklists, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that will be submitted to Opwdd. And then if that is approved, then the broker would then submit a plan amendment to include the housing subsidy part of the budget. So in this case, because it's someone going to college, it's obviously only for 9 months. So the budget would pay a part of someone's rent over this 9-month period. So the maximum for a 1-bedroom apartment in Westchester is $1,275. And the things that the broker would need to get from the family would be, are they earning SSI or SSDI? You know, maybe do they have a part-time job on the side? Are they receiving unemployment? All these documents would be gathered, and then the broker would work on the housing subsidy template of the budget, and then they would be able to let the family know ahead of time how much of the rent would be paid for. Now, I want to stress it's a subsidy, so it will not cover the full amount. It's just meant to assist. And then there are other parts of the budget, and this is not, you know, as I said, I know this is specific for college, but for anyone who wants to apply for housing subsidy, it can also help assist with their utility bills, cell phone, their transportation, and there are other categories within the self-direction budget that can help pay for those housing costs. So again, I think Diana can explain how the Impact U part works with the housing subsidy.
First of all, I can't say enough about the Housing Navigator and those who helped our program with this. It was a game changer for a number of the families in our program leveraging self-direction. It was incredible. I mean, they were amazing, and you know, just again, can't say enough about that. As Karen explains, it is a subsidy, so go into that with your eyes open. It is not the full amount. There will be a balance that remains because, again, as Karen explains, the 9-month versus the 12-month, it's only a portion of it. There is a balance, but it is still a large portion of the total cost of residential fees can be picked up and be covered. You cannot get aggravated by it. The process is extraneous for a reason because it's not easy, but it is so worthwhile. So the sooner that you start setting your sights on programs, which I realize is not an easy process in and of itself, the better it is to get started on it once you do. But it's a fantastic possibility there to go after. Housing navigation is key. Get a housing navigator.
Millie, did you have anything to add on this before I go to, there's a question in the chat related to the housing. You're muted, Millie. Millie, you're muted.
Oh. Oh, I think, you know, we, as a parent, you know, where's my son going to live is always the question. And I think that this experience has helped him separate from us and be more independent. So I think the housing part of it is so valuable, almost as valuable as the college experience, because to me, this program would not have had as much merit if John was a commuter. It just wouldn't. And I don't think it would have had the same effect on him. So I think the housing piece is critical to the program.
Okay, there's a question in the chat. Are the individuals subject to the same rule as those seeking housing not due to college? So for example, having to apply to Section 8 before qualifying for the housing subsidy. Karen or Diana or any of you, do you have a response to that?
Well, that's funny you bring up the Section 8 because we just got new requests during the week from OPWDD of, you know, what people have to now apply for before receiving the housing subsidy, things like food stamps and this Section 8. So we're still kind of trying to get to grips with what exactly that means. But basically, what we really want to point out today is that, yes, this housing subsidy for this college person is the exact same as someone who's applying for, or, you know, who's looking for housing and they're working, or they, you know, it's the very, very same. The criteria is always the same. Every person has to complete the same paperwork, and the subsidy amount, you know, is dependent, as I said, on their income and their outgoings. So yes, it's the same process.
Knowing that it's the same process and putting those things into account, do you suggest starting that process? essentially almost the year before you know your child is going to start looking for housing for college, for example?
Well, the thing is, with the housing subsidy, you have to send a lease. Like, it has to be, you know what I mean? You have to have a lot of details for it. You can't get the housing subsidy saying, oh, he might go to college next year. They want to know the specific details. I mean, you could absolutely have your budget ready, you know, and as much in place as possible. But to actually get that housing subsidy, it has to have a real lease of where they're going to move into.
Yeah, no, I mean more so applying for like Section 8 ahead of time, for example.
Oh, I understand. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, as I said, it's just kind of coming through to us now. We're trying to get more information on that Section 8 to find out, you know, if people have to apply for it before they get the housing subsidy through self-direction.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
There's a question, Karen. At some point you made reference to the young person not living in their parents' home. Is that a requirement to apply for the housing subsidy?
Well, yeah, someone, you know, has to be living independently. Now, independently, they could be living, you know, with 3 other individuals, but they can't be living in their parents' home. So if someone's living at home, the parents can't receive the housing subsidy, or the individual can't receive the housing subsidy. They have to be living independent of their parents. And
But is it?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I'm guessing what the question is, for example, if my daughter was planning to go next year, she's living with me now, but she's going to go to college. So she doesn't have to move out first.
No, exactly. You
Okay.
would just, we would just put in the plan amendment, and we would say as of September, so the budget might be approved in August, but as of September, then the housing subsidy would be paid. And then again, over the summer, when she's back home, then the housing subsidy won't be paid for those 3 months. So it'll only be when, you know, when she's away from home, when she's not living at home.
Okay. Is the housing, what's that?
Yeah, I just saw a question about the Housing Navigator.
Yeah.
It's asking, is the Housing Navigator paid by the OPWDD budget? There is a category in the budget under other than personal services where a Housing Navigator can be paid. It's unfortunate that this is the only part of the budget that the Housing Navigator can be paid from, because there are other items like the utilities and the phone and transportation and clothing that all come from that category, and it's capped at $3,000. So, you know, it's hard for people. Maybe they want to spend $1,500 on a Housing Navigator, and then that only leaves them at $1,500 for the other items. But and we actually offer a housing navigation service as well at WIHD, and we also offer just a service out of pocket cost. But absolutely, the broker can look into having it paid from your budget. You would hope that it's a short-term thing, that you're only going to work with a Housing Navigator for a short period of time. So maybe you just have to forego it paying for other items, you know, in that particular year. And then when the budget rolls over the following year, you could put the money back into, you know, your utilities or wherever.
Can the parent own the home but not live with the individual? So I guess they're referring to if I was going to rent an apartment for my child and then sublet it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think, like, and I've had families who've suggested this to me, that, you know, they want their son to live independently, but it's much easier for them to stay in the family home. So as long as the parent moves out and would have to show, you know, everything, you have to show proof that the parent is renting somewhere else or is living somewhere else, and then the individual is living in the family home, and maybe there's 1 or 2 other friends also living there, maybe there's a live-in caregiver. So just as long as the parent has definitely got another address at a different, you know, that they're residing somewhere else. There's lots and lots of options with housing. And we had the transition conference in January. WIHD had a transition conference, and we had 2 or 3 sessions on housing. So, you know, maybe if people want specific information on how to figure out the housing piece, they can email me or email Stephanie, and we can get some information to people about housing options. I think today we're really just talking about the college, you know, this college experience for people.
Yeah, I can actually put the link in the chat to the videos from the transition conference if you weren't able to participate. Okay, the next subject I wanted to cover, you may have addressed it a little bit earlier, is the family reimbursed respite, which I think you talked about the weekends and the summer months, but was there anything else that any of you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so family reimbursed respite and housing subsidy are not normally in the same budget because someone can't receive respite dollars if they're living independently. However, because this is just a 9-month college experience, and then when they go back for the summer or during vacation time, and they want to, maybe take some respite programs like Northeastern or Special Olympics or something like that, or maybe they just want the family, have a friend who can come and bring the individual out for the day or something like that. They want to use the family reimbursed respite dollars to pay for that. So again, this was something that that impacts you, and the housing navigator and the brokers work very hard to make sure that people can have a family reimbursed respite and the housing subsidy in their budgets at the same time, as long as you are not using it so you can't have a housing subsidy paid in September and also be using family reimbursed respite in the same month. They have to be at different times. You can't have the housing subsidy and FRR at the same time.
Okay, Diana or Millie, did you have anything to add on that? If not, there's another question about college experience programs out of New York State. Does that put a halt to the self-direction funding source?
Yeah, self-direction, I mean, this particular program is for New York only. So, I mean, I have had individuals who maybe live in Westchester but go to college in a different county within New York, and we can kind of figure that out. You have to have the 2 addresses in the budget and things like that. But outside of New York, I don't have any direct experience with that to know how that would work. But it's certainly something I can look into it and get some information for the person that asked the question, and get them some information on that and send it back to them. Diana,
Okay.
do you know anything about out of?
No, the only thing that we have experience with is New York and New York-based fiscal intermediaries.
Yeah, and what I should have said too is that when someone is using their budget, it really is meant to be New York staffing and, all expenses within New York. But obviously, we have certain counties who border Connecticut or New Jersey. So each fiscal intermediary requires you to do an out-of-state form. The broker would say this family or this individual is going to use staffing, are going to go to a community class perhaps in Connecticut. So as long as, again, you get pre-approval for that with the fiscal intermediary, that there are certain times that someone may be using services and submitting for expenses outside of New York, but it's normally because of the tri-state. So, if it's someone going to college from Massachusetts, I think that's something very different.
Okay, I don't know if you guys saw in the chat a few screens back, someone had asked about where can I see a list of programs in the area. So I had put a link to a website called thinkcollege.net. And the reason I'm mentioning it is because I just put another link in. They've got loads of information on that website for professionals and families and students exploring these opportunities. And I put a link for a specific page about paying for college and the various different avenues you can pursue for funding in New York or out of New York. So the self-direction budget is something that the brokers and the DDROs in New York State, at least in some areas, have been really creative about applying it. Be advised that in a lot of states, I've got colleagues in Ohio, for example, and if I wanted to put my daughter into a program in Ohio, I'm going to pay $75,000 a year, just like any other kid going to college. So we do have it good kind of in New York. We've got to be creative, which is why I wanted to have this conversation. But if you go to Think College, there's a broader conversation about other avenues for funding college opportunities for our kids. So that's right in the chat. Okay. Again, the in-person services, again, you addressed that a little bit earlier. I don't know if we want to go back and just make sure we have a comprehensive look of what that looks like, those in-person services.
Sure. So I think, yeah, I did mention that there are certain households are, living independently related costs, such as someone's utilities, their cell phone, internet use, staff activity fee, which would be if they were going out with their self-hired ComHab and they were go to a movie or go bowling or something, then the staff ticket could be paid for. The individual always has to pay for their own recreation, but the staff, any costs that they would incur, would be covered under staff activity fee. Transportation, so they were going to get the train to the city together, then the individual and their staff's ticket would be paid for, or they were getting, you know, a bus. There's a clothing stipend for anyone over 18, $250 clothing clothing stipend that someone can use. And I think they're the main categories. I think we mentioned earlier there is a gym or membership category that's capped at $1,500 if someone wanted to join a gym. Also, what's interesting is under the community classes category, you can also work with a personal trainer from a gym under that same category. And then there's another category called household supports, which is, for example, some people, if they have someone who's able to come in and clean the apartment, especially if it's a group of young men and they want to make sure that, you know, everything is looks clean, you can pay for, you know, cleaning service or snow removal and things like that. So there's a lot there. I mean, and hopefully, you know, between your broker and the program, that you can make sure that you use as many categories as possible.
Okay, Diana, Millie, did you want to add anything else to that?
As far as the gym is concerned, I did take advantage of that with John. And what's great about it is that this year, when he was at Concordia, and before COVID, when the gym was open at Concordia, he knew what to do because he had been taught and he had been gone through sessions with a personal trainer to show him how to use the equipment. And let's face it, we want all our kids to be healthy and develop those good habits. And it's also socialization for them. So now he goes with his peer buddies and his peer neighbors. They go to Planet Fitness, I think twice a week at night, and he loves it.
Thanks, Millie. So the last topic we also covered a little bit. It was about limitations for these college experience programs, such as out-of-state programs. Do any of the three of you have any other examples of roadblocks you've encountered in your efforts to apply self-direction funds to this experience?
I think one of the major roadblocks, and someone asked earlier, should we start early? And that's what I always say to people, is get your budget going, you know, even if it's not the housing or the college part yet, or they're still living at home, get your budget in, and because the approvals are taking such a long time. So you really need to start now. We have someone at WHD as well, Janine Belfast, who helps people with OPWDD eligibility and can kind of help along with that. So I think just starting early and planning as well is crucial, because it's not a fast process and there are multiple layers of approvals, and it has to go to the fiscal intermediary and OPWDD and then to central office and then back. So nothing's quick about this. So as soon as you are thinking about a possible college, you know, speak to your broker, start the conversation with the college, how that's going to look at your budget, where is this going to fit into it, and have as much work done ahead of time as possible, so that when you're ready and you have your lease in hand, you can, you're able to just, you know, you've got all those steps already taken care of. That would be my advice, is that it's a long process.
Diana?
I am in echo chamber right now.
Okay.
You know, because really, if you know, we started off with the assumption that everybody on the call already has their budget, has self-direction, and it's an incorrect assumption to make, because there are too many people who procrastinate, and procrastination in this area is the greatest enemy. It takes too long, and with what we've experienced, and everyone is so fatigued by saying due to COVID, ... but it has slowed everything down to a snail's pace, and they are going to use that as the go-to for everything upcoming now due to COVID. Our wheels are turning much slower due to COVID. The wheels have stopped, and it is going to be their get out of jail free card for everything. So don't wait. If you have a year, if you have 3 years still before your son or daughter is exiting out of high school, it will be here like that. And there are not enough programs right now, which we are all heartbroken over, but it's a reality. The demand is way too high for what is available for these young adults. And while we're trying to get that to catch up with what we need, you have to at least have your ducks in a row. So again, I'm just going to mirror everything that Karen said. Get your stuff together, make sure that you have it ready to go. So when the time comes, you're ready to move. Get your brokers, get everybody that you have your team in place so that you know when you see what you want, you can go after it. Can't emphasize that enough.
Okay, thank you, guys.
And I just want to say on that topic,
yeah,
because I
please.
saw this from Olga, that people don't know about this topic. They don't. I found out about OPDDW from a parent, all right? Schools don't tell you that. They just don't. Maybe they do now, but not when I was there. Nobody told me about that. And I also want to address the fact that some people think that there's a stigma attached to that. You know what? Your kid is special. I look at my kid like he's special. He can do some things that other people can't do, and there's some things he can't do. It's up to the parent. We're the ones, you know, that have to really be out there looking for these things and finding them. They're out there. It's up to us. The schools can only go so far because, you know, at the end of the day, it's the school. It's up to us, the parents, to really make it happen for these kids.
I agree, Millie. I actually didn't. I have an 18-year-old son with autism, and I had no idea these things existed till this year. And that's only because I happened to fall into working with this organization. Otherwise, I'd probably still not know. The school did not provide that, and it's a school that is really, our district is really involved in special education. They have a large population for kids with special education, but they don't let us know what programs are
They
available.
don't get it because they're not the parents. We're the parents. We're the ones that find the programs. We're the ones that find what works for our kids. And we're the ones that need to be involved in that. And unfortunately, you know, not everybody is so assertive, aggressive, but you know what they say, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. But the resources are out there. I didn't have any problem getting John self-direction. I was guided by WIHD. I had tremendous support from the brokers. It's out there, but it's up to, we are the ones that have to find it.
Yeah,
they're not going to give it to us.
Thanks, Millie. I see a bunch of questions in the chat regarding where do I find these programs? Are there other programs? There's some questions, Diana, specific to Impact U and what's going on with Impact U. I will say this, one of the things I get to do in my position is I work with colleague Karen Horowitz, who's on the line, on a statewide coalition for inclusive higher ed. And we are working on some materials for the purpose of exactly what you're talking about. We are hoping to get materials in the hands of high school professionals and brokers so that these can become more regular conversations, so that the conversations at your special education meeting is not which day hab program are you going to go to. And that's not a knock on day hab programs at all. They are absolutely wonderful. It's just that everybody's not the same and every person needs to know what their options are. As far as locally, there is a program at Mount St. Vincent down in Riverdale. There is a program, well, I just won't say there's a program, but there is a twinkle in the eye of people at St. John's University in Queens, that hopefully there will be one there. There is a wonderful one up in Syracuse. And if you go on the Think College website, there's like 300 some odd programs like this around the country. Again, it requires a college search, just like you would do for a typical child. I do want to go back. There are some questions in the chat pertaining to, there's a lot of brokers on here and care coordinators, which I'm thrilled about. And there are questions surrounding, and I guess with an eye towards supporting families, why would I put my kid in a program like this? So there was a question in the chat about if I participate in a program like this, what's the plan when we're done? Like what's the post college experience plan? So I don't know if any of you want to speak to that.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna kind of go back to what I just said with the due to COVID line. Our goal for year 2 was going to have a very strong focus on external internships, which was cut short because of, you know, not being allowed out of a house. But it still remains focused on trying to find different locations and trying to find internships. one of the things that we have a very strong focus on is not only the idea of independence, it has been that, so I shouldn't say idea, it really has been integrated independence, socialization, and just the overall evolvement of maturity, which the students have excelled at. What happens next? We're not an employment agency, and I will say this with my hand on my heart, any program that claims that they are, be wary of. There's so much that can be done, but the focus on really helping these children, and I shouldn't say on these adults, on helping these adults form that independence and their self-awareness on how and what behaviors are needed in order to stand on their own is really critical. That's what we work on. What everyone works on is to make sure that they can make it in the world. And what that means for each individual is going to be based on what each individual goals are. So I think that I can't speak for other programs, I can speak for our own. We want to make sure that when they exit, they're exiting stronger, more resilient, and with a different outlook on what comes next based on what they wanted when they entered.
So if I could just add to that, first of all, I want to emphasize also the importance of readiness. You know, these programs are out there, but I really worked hard to get John ready to go away for school. And I did that by sending him to the ARC camp in the summer that has sleepaway for 2 weeks. He did that for 3 years in a row. So he was ready. So if you're thinking about this for your child, please don't wait till it's their first year to be away from home. Try to put them in situations where they experienced that before. Very, very important. As far as for post Concordia, there's Access VR that then, you know, the young adults can access that for training. There is Project Search, which John is applying to for next year. And he'll have another year of working and in a structured setting with support. And then after that, my goal is either Northern Westchester Hospital for him to work there or the Boys and Girls Club of Mount Kisco. So I would urge you, put your young adults in situations now that will mirror what you want for them in the future, because that's the way that they're going to develop and grow.
Thanks, Millie. There's a question in the chat from a care manager from a while ago. I hope she's still on. It says, I'm seeking to create strong justifications to support my request for self-direction services. As you know, there's been a budget cut at the state level. And then I think Laura put something in the chat about a lifting of the 20%. So Diana or Karen, do you have any comments on the justifications piece?
Well, I mean, the whole reason that someone wants to do self-direction is to work on their independent skills, you know, to be as independent as possible, to be out in the community, to be integrated in the community, to be able to participate in classes. That's the whole philosophy behind self-direction. So I think by adding all those things, and it's all about, you know, seeking independence, they want to perhaps move out of their parents' home and they want assistance with expenses. But I think the independence is the crucial word in the justification, or should be the crucial word.
Yeah, I was going to say having some intent lined up in terms of a plan and what the individual may have in mind in the short term of how and where they're going to apply the budget would also be a good idea.
Yeah, and I think maybe the reason that OPWDD are kicking back on this is, you know, about 2 years ago, you know, everyone was talking about self-direction, and we were getting phone calls like, you know, every week with people looking to do self-direction. And I always asked people when they called me, the very first thing is, well, why do you want to do self-direction? Because it is a lot of paperwork and it is a lot of, you know, meetings. And if someone said, well, you know, my son is going to day hab 5 days a week and we use agency comp staff, I'm like, well, what is, you know, there's no real point in you doing self-direction in that case. So you have to ask yourself the question, why are you doing self-direction? And if it's because you want, the individual to, as I said, to participate in the community, and to work with some self-hired staffing, etc., or use the housing subsidy, then absolutely self-direction is a good fit for you. But you know, you need to justify why you want to use what you plan to use your self-direction budget for, or is it just going to sit there unused?
Okay, couple new questions in the chat. Reese is asking, are we looking for brokers through OPWDD? That no is the quick answer to that. You're going to pursue eligibility through OPWDD. And as Karen indicated, Janine Belfast is our colleague at WHD. She can help you explore that once you are approved for eligibility. And then you have to, the next step is getting your waiver, which I welcome Karen to speak to a little bit. And at that point, if you want to pursue self-direction, you've got to let them know. It's a really long and arduous process. So the quick answer is no, you don't get your broker from OPWDD. It's sort of another step down the road. There's more to your question, but Karen, did you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's a long process. So there's multiple steps before you get your broker. You have to have the waiver and eligibility, and then be assigned a care manager. Then the care manager submits a request for you to self-direct. Then you find your broker and your fiscal intermediary. They submit a packet, and then you finally have an approved budget. So I think what we all have been saying throughout this session is it's all about, you know, starting early, getting everything ready, getting your documents together, and, you know, pre-planning and getting everything in. The brokers are actually trained by OPWDD. So they, you know, they're OPWDD brokers, but they work for different agencies and they're also independent. And OPWDD has a full list of brokers, but you wouldn't be looking for the broker until you're ready to move forward with the self-direction budget.
Okay. Someone is asking, is Project Search open? I heard it was closed due to COVID. Does anybody know?
It's open. It's open. They started, I contacted them in December. They scheduled an interview for us in February. And I just received the applications yesterday to apply for that. So it's open. You go through ARC for that.
And I actually wanted to follow up as well when, you know, if someone asked about what happens after college. And as Diana said, it's like for every kid, it's the same thing as what happens after college. But there are some great programs out there, supported employment programs through various agencies like ARC, Cardinal McCluskey, Ability Beyond. So there are lots of different employment programs to help people. Normally, first you would have to go through Access VR, and then once the funding is completed for Access, then it would come from someone's budget. And you know, again, it's important to make sure that you know, like you have some sort of an idea of what this individual wants to do, because we've had one or two experiences with individuals who were doing, I think it was Pathways or one of those employment programs with the agency. Sorry, it was ETP. And in the end, the agency felt that the individual actually didn't want to work, and they weren't successful in this program. Because I think it was the parents who wanted the individual to work, but not the individual. So, you know, when they were asked at interview questions, etc., it came across that the individual actually didn't want to work. So I guess my point is, you know, you need to make sure that, you know, as Millie said, in John's case, she had him ready so that when he went there, he knew what to expect. It's the same for sort of the job piece, is to make sure that the individual actually does want to work and understand what that looks like, you know, and having to work a couple of days a week, etc. So it just really varies on the person.
Okay. There's a question, and I want to apologize, Katie, because I think you've asked this more than once, and I think I understand what your question is now. There's a question about the college tuition, and I'm thinking the question is the aspects of the tuition that are not covered by the community classes section or any other section. And other than the resource that I put in the chat to Think College and how do I pay for college, anything else you can speak to with regard to what the tuition is for this program, for these kinds of programs? Diana, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, or any of you really.
I'm sorry, repeat that, Stephanie. I just didn't.
So in addition to the aspects of the program that can be covered through the budget, whether it be the housing subsidy or the community classes, is there a tuition fee that the parents are going to pay out of pocket, or that they have to cover?
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
There is. And they vary from program to program. There's obviously not just one set fee. So it's dependent upon the program. And in most cases, if you go on the website and you look, you can see those details, or reach out to one of us and we would be able to provide that information. But as any other college program, this is where it becomes, across the board, there are other fees that are involved.
So at this point, if you had a question in the chat that was not answered, I would ask that you please put it in the chat again, because I went through and I think we covered everything that was in the chat. I just wanted to add my 2 cents, and it's not even my 2 cents, I stole it. For those of you who have been on the other sessions with me, there was a parent of a student, I think it was a student at the VIP program at the College of Mount St. Vincent. It was a Westchester County parent, and he responded to a question in a way that I felt that was so compelling. I just wanted to share it. So for any of you parents or professionals who are sitting there thinking, why would I send my kids to college? They can't get a bachelor's degree. Or if you're a care coordinator or a broker and you've got to respond to that question from a family, I just want to share the way that he posed his answer, because it was, for me, who I'm already hook, line, and sinker on these programs, but it was so moving to me. And he said, I explored all of the options. I explored day habilitation programs. I explored transition programs. I explored gap year programs. I explored everything I could find, vocational training programs for my daughter. And he said, when I looked at the college experience programs, in particular the VIP program where she was attending, he said, I saw opportunity for her to grow in all of the aspects of her life. She was going to grow socially. She was going to grow in the aspects of independent living. She was going to grow in learning, in accessing learning and participating in classes and making choices. She was going to grow in her decision making. How do I build relationships? Who do I want to build a relationship with? What do I do when they go south? And when I heard him explain that, it was just, I wish I had recorded it, because I know I didn't say it as well as he did. But it really struck me as a parent that when I've got 4 kids, and when they all fly the coop and go off wherever they're going to go, whether it's college or traveling or work, all of my apprehensions and fears as a parent are there for them too. And I think what these programs offer is that you don't have to say no to college. I mean, we all went to college. Those of us that went to college, we went and we got a degree, but at 17, that's not why I went. I went to college because that was what you did next, right? And when I went, it wasn't in my head, well, what kind of professional am I going to be? I mean, they do much better transition planning now than they did back then. But it was really, how am I going to get myself fed every day? How am I going to get my clothes clean? How am I going to interact with all these strangers? How am I going to make a statement about who I am and who am I going to be in this community? And so it was really compelling to me. And I just wanted to share it to the extent that it's helpful to any of you in your own decision-making process or in supporting a family, that this is just another avenue that might be perfect for some young people. It might be really wrong for other people, but it is an option that shouldn't be disregarded when you start to think about what's next for my kid when they're 18 or 21 or whatever year they're going to exit high school. There's a lot my daughter can't do. I know that. She's starting to know that, but there's a heck of a lot she can do. And if she wants to go to college, she went on a field trip. In my district, the 5th grade goes to Manhattanville College for a field trip. And the whole purpose is just to expose them to higher learning. And from that year, she's been telling me she's going to college. She liked the campus. She liked the campus. She liked the building. She liked the people, right? Obviously, we're going to have conversations about what that means and is that the right path for her. But by God, if at age 21, she's telling me she wants to go learn more and be in a college setting, I'm not going to tell her no. I'm not going to be the one to tell her you can't. So I just wanted to share that. I'll be quiet now. We have a little bit more time. I did put in the chat for anybody who's got to jump off our evaluation form. It's a Google form. If you could just take 1 minute and click on that and fill that out, I would love that because it really helps us going forward. Someone's asking about the St. John's program, and I hesitate to even use the word program. I've had one conversation with somebody who is just starting out talking to the higher ups over there. Diana, maybe you know a little bit more, but there's a woman who is in our field and has the same passion that we do. And she is starting to chip away at building a program. I think at this point, she's pulling some kids onto the campus to participate in different aspects of the community from other programs. But hopefully in the near future, she's going to start to build something that looks a little bit like what we've been talking about. Diane, I don't know if you or Karen or anyone on the call knows anything more about that. Please chime in.
I haven't heard anything about it yet.
Okay.
Aside from what you had mentioned that day, I'm thrilled to hear it, and I hope it comes to fruition. I wish her the best.
Yeah, I mean, the dream for us is that these programs are going to pop up more. I mean, in my opinion, there shouldn't be a campus that doesn't have one. You know, our kids should have as many options as anyone else, but they're not easy to build. I think the biggest obstacle, and Diana can attest to this, that colleges are like, oh, we don't know how to do that. And the truth is, you know, nobody really knew how to, you just do it, right? And you figure out, like Millie said, we figure out what works for these kids and we make it work. So at this point, does anybody want to unmute or have any comments or questions based upon what you've heard? I did slot us until 12:30. That's not to say we can't shut down early, but if anybody's got any additional questions or comments.
I just wanted to say to start having these conversations at your IEP meetings. It's never too early to start having these conversations in your IEP meetings. Bridge the gap between what they know, what you know, and what's out there, because not everybody knows everything. But if you start having the conversations in middle school at your IEP meeting, then let the school know what you're thinking, what your son or daughter is thinking, what do they want, and let them help you. It's not that they don't want to, sometimes they don't know. So start bringing this up at your IEP meetings. All these questions that were asked here and what you want for your child, you know, start letting them think about it and let them help you also.
That's a really good point, Millie, because the other thing that a lot of teams at high schools are not doing awesomely is planning for leaving high school. And I don't mean to say that in a judgmental way. I just think that a lot of times the track for our typical kids, the trajectory is so expected. Everyone's going to go to college, you can apply the applications, but the guidance counselors and the IEP chair people are not necessarily, I mean, look how many people on this call didn't even know this was an option. So bringing that up might change the development of your IEP, because if my child's going to go straight to work, right, or if my child's going to go to college, the goals are going to be different. If she's going to navigate a college campus and figure out, how do I talk to my teachers about, I need a different version of the book, you know, she doesn't need that skill if she's going to go to college. I mean, some of the skills are transferable no matter where they're going to go, but college is different. So it may help you to identify what the focus is going to be in that IEP for the high school year. So that's a really, really good point. We defer a lot to the professionals at high school on what to do, but in a lot of respects, we sometimes are the resource for them. So don't forget that.
And something also just to keep in mind, don't be shy when it comes to writing letters, writing emails to your local congressman or woman, your assembly people, your councilman. You know, you have to make noise. We have to make noise about the fact that during this time where all we hear about is discrimination, this is one of the most discriminated against populations. This doesn't discriminate against color or religion or gender. This hits everybody, and we have to stand up for it. We talk constantly with our students about self-advocacy. We still have to be the ones who advocate the most. And we have to talk about the fact that there are not enough programs. There are still not enough services. We have to defend, and we have to be fierce in that defense.
There's a great question in the chat about guardianship. Diana, and Millie and Karen too, but Diana, I think you probably could fill us in a little bit on when a student participates in one of these college experience programs, but mom or dad or another family member is a legal guardian for them due to their disability. How does that impact the experience for the student or for the parent, if at all?
Well, I think it depends on how extensive the guardianship is. And right now, you know, I can't speak to certain things because of obvious confidentiality when it comes to that with our students. but the students, we haven't run into any issues with it on campus right now.
I think the main difference, and you alluded to it, is the communication piece. When our kids go to college, despite how it's hitting our pocketbook, we can't call the college and get information on somebody over 18 years of age. I think that's a little bit different if you are someone's legal guardian. But I don't think, practically speaking, it impacts their involvement at all. Krishna, did you want to specify exactly what you were thinking of when you were asking about limits? Krishna, are you there?
Yep, I'm still here. I guess my basic, like, one of the question is, and it's not on the topic probably, but do some colleges say like, okay, you have guardianship, so you're not eligible to get admission? Also, like, the yeah, basically, yeah, the admission, etc.
So what you're saying is you think that because you have guardianship, they'll assume that he's lower functioning or that he's not going to be able to make it there. Is that what you mean?
That is definitely one question. Or, can they even have some policies like that? Like,
Yeah, I think that's, again, that's more, Krishna, of a legal and a medical issue that's dependent upon the individual.
If I'm not mistaken, and this is from my conversations with Diana and her colleagues and other people in similar positions at other programs, similar to the college application process for a typical student, while these students don't necessarily have academic bars to hit before they can come in, there's still a determination of whether or not it's a good fit. And I think that at each program, you're going to go and you're going to meet with the people running the program. Your son or daughter is going to meet with the people running the program. And if there are aspects of need that they feel they can't meet, or that they feel there's going to be a barrier, that's a conversation you have. And then depending upon what services and supports they have and what services and supports you might be able to provide, you're going to make a collective decision about is this a smart move or not. But I don't think anyone is going to say you can't come here because you have guardianship. I would find that hard to believe when the entire college experience program is specifically for this population. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm more than happy to talk with you further. And also Janine Belfast, who always comes up a lot in these calls, is our colleague who does benefits navigation and might have some input on that as well.
The only time I pull the guardianship card is with the doctor. That's the only time. And, I keep it in my back pocket. Maybe someday I won't have to use it, but I have it in case I have to use it. And that's how I look at guardianship.
Okay, I don't see any more questions coming in the chat. I did put the evaluation link up again. I really would appreciate if you have a minute before you move on to your next, well, hopefully it's not your next Zoom, but if you're anything like me, you're going Zoom to Zoom to Zoom these days.
Oh, yeah.
But if you could take a minute and fill out that evaluation, that would be wonderful. I want to thank everyone who participated today. I see a hand up. Kay, did you have a question? Or is that just giving me high five?
No, I do. No. Yeah, that too. But awesome. I'm really enjoying this webinar. So my questions are, if you already have a student, already has self-direction and in college and had services with Access BR, but they're doing a what's the one when you're completing a degree? That's matriculated, right?
Matriculated.
Right. So they're completing a degree, but if they need for staff to be with them during the class, because it's found out that it's better for them, because they're facing different challenges, will self-direction covers that?
Again, it's something that we'd have to look into your specific case. It would depend on the college if they had any issues with, outside staff or, outside staff or students being there. But I can't see why it would be an issue. community classes is meant to be for students to go to, and if they need assistance, then the budget will also pay for the ComHab staff. So I don't think it would, but by looking at the guidelines, but you'd have to, get specific information.
Like what? I mean, they've done, I mean, there's COVID right now, they do community classes, but it's not
Well,
community.
yeah, so
I didn't mean to say community class, I'm sorry. I meant to say that they're a matriculated student, but it seems as if that the last semester of their degree, completing the degree, there's been some setbacks. And it was suggested that possibly they have the ComHab worker with them, that will help them. So my question is, the self-direction covers that?
yeah, as long as that person would go through the self-hired piece and be registered and pre-approved by the fiscal intermediary, then that staff could work with him at the classes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going back to gallery view to see if any more. Thank you for putting that little hand up so I could see you. Does anybody else have any questions? Well, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'm going to stay on until everybody logs off to see if anybody has any additional questions. I put my email into the chat. I will do it again. If you have any follow-up questions for me or any of our colleagues at WIHD, please don't hesitate to email us. One of the greatest things about where we work is that even if you call me or email me and I have no idea what the answer is, somebody at WIHD usually does. So you will get forwarded on to the professional that can help you best, or professionals. Usually it's more than one. As parents of kids with disabilities, we know that we navigate numerous systems at one time. So it's usually not one realm that you need the help in. So thanks for joining us. And thank you, Karen, Millie, and Diana, for all of your wisdom and your insight. I think this was a really meaningful conversation for folks.
My pleasure. This is a journey for all of us.
Good being with you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Stephanie, for organizing.
Yeah, thank you. We'll see you next time.